Welcome to all car enthusiasts, because this full driving review will be about the all-new BMW X7, and we're also here in the Big Bend National Park in Texas, so we'll have great landscape views and great car visuals for you. And you know, everything's big in Texas, so this car is also really fitting right here. Exterior, interior and the driving experience, here for you on Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars, with Thomas, and we will enjoy this year together in Full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! This is the biggest BMW double kidney ever presented. We say Doppelniere, by the way, in German. That's the direct translation. However, those headlamps here, they are quite slim to that. What do you think about this front design? I think it works because it differentiates the X7 to the X5, so you can see, oh, this is the bigger version. Of course, you can argue if it's maybe too big. Those headlamps here, they come standard already with LED. Optional, you can also get the so-called laser light. You can see it here with those blue accentuations. This is a design element. The laser light itself, on the technology-wise, is just for the high beam. So, if you have those ones here, the normal LED light for the normal light will be just the same. Then for the high beam, you have the laser light, which has a range of 600 meters, but only in Europe. Not in the US. In the US, it's restricted by law to 300 meters. There will be some law changes maybe in the future. Then they can just also, software-wise unleash it. But at the moment, restricted to 300 meters. And that's, the normal range of the normal LEDs anyway. So we tested it also at night. Those LEDs have incredible lighting features. So you can see it also in our shots. You can see everything. And then when you add the high beam to it, it's just a little bit further. If we would have the EU spec of this car, it would be even further and we could double the range. That would be even more interesting. Well, let's see out how this one will be changing in the future, but it's definitely interesting for you to know as a customer, depending on which market you're coming from. The length is at 5 meters 15, 16 foot 9 or 203 inches. Wheelbase 3 meters 10. So if you compare it to the BMW X5, this one here, oh, it welcomes me when I have the key in my pocket. This one here, 23 centimeters longer than the BMW X5, and 13 centimeters of that goes into the wheelbase. So indeed, they have a different wheelbase to offer more room also on the interior. We'll soon come to that. The wheels come with 20-inch standard. Those ones are the optional 22-inch. And I can already tell you right now, Yes, usually the smaller wheels give you more comfort, that's always the case, but in combination with the soft air suspension they applied here, you can still have a decent comfort also with 22-inch wheels if you want those for the visual comfort. Look at those. Then this one is sometimes an active air breather at BMW for aerodynamics, but in this case, this one here is all closed in the wheel arch, so this element in this case just for the visuals. So those wheel arches, here they are in vehicle color, design pure excellent, and the M Sport come with the vehicle color wheel arches. However, the base version comes with those plastic off-road fender wheel arches, so to say. I think they always fit a little bit better to SUVs in general, but that's just a matter of taste. I think in this way it also looks good. The rest of the car you can see is very upright from those windows. It's really a huge car. Contrasting roof rails. What do you think here about the side profile? Oh, the Hofmeister kink, one of the design elements classic to BMW, is also somehow placed here at the rear windows. We will also find it in the interior. I will soon show that to you. This is one of the rare cars where I don't have to go down with the rear profile. I can just stand upright, and to me, I really like the design in front and in side profile, but in the rear I see one problem, especially, from this camera angle, you can see how this top part of the vehicle is somehow more narrow than the lower part, and that's, somehow creating a strange visual effect. I think it should be a little bit wider here in this upper area, or what do you think? Then the tail lamps are also drawn very wide. There's a transition here with the chrome element right there. This one is the 50i here today, the V8. And it does have real exhaust pipes, but this one here, the outer part, this then is just for beauty. I think it's a little bit too much, especially with the V8. Couldn't it be just, the real exhaust pipe and that's it from design? This is my take for it. And in the very lower part, you can see this is then a silver accentuation right there. And let me also tell you something about technology, because you can also get optionally a rear axle steering for this vehicle. It's 3.5 degrees in both directions, so at lower speeds, below 60 kilometers in comfort mode or below 80 kilometers an hour in sports mode, it turns in the opposite direction than the front wheels to give you more agility and also narrow parking, like better parking and also a narrower turning circle. And at higher speeds, and so above 60 or above 80 kilometers, then it goes in the parallel direction than the front wheels. And this one increases stability and also at higher speeds. And the air suspension, which is standard for this vehicle, varies for 8 centimeters in total. So it goes 4 centimeters up if you want it. For example, if you go off-roading, or 4 centimeters down a little bit automatically when you drive faster. But you can also put it all the way down, for example, if you're going into like a very, narrow parking garage or something like that. So you have a lot of flexibility still, although you have this very big vehicle. And if you go off-roading, by the way, there's also an underfloor cover available in an off-road package together then with the hill descent control. That would be another option, but I doubt it will be used for off-roading that much. But, at least then you have the possibility to pop it up a little bit for off-roading if you like. And in the so-called Executive Drive Pro package, you can get the rear axle steering together with the anti-tilt control. This then, again, reducing the rolling if you drive a little bit faster. The rear axle steering you can also get individually. The anti-tilt control just in the package of this Executive Drive Pro. And also another color for you, this is Arctic Grey. It has a blue nuance depending on how the light situation is. And here under the hood there's also the inline 6-cylinder petrol engine. We will also test it out later and compare it to the V8. Wow, look at that beautiful engine work. This is really something still for car enthusiasts. This is the 4.4-liter V8, 462 horsepower in the so-called 50i. 5.4 seconds is the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers an hour or 62 miles an hour. This one here predominantly for the US. The most V8s will be sold here. In Europe, we can only get the 3-liter inline 6-cylinder petrol with 340 horsepower. But that one still has, just an acceleration of 6.1 seconds. It's the 40i then. And then there are also the diesels. 3-liter 6-cylinder diesel, either 30D with 265 horsepower, 7 seconds acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour, or then the M50D. So the M50D, less horsepower, just 400, so less horsepower than this V8 petrol here, but still the same acceleration figure because it's so good in the Newton meters of torque. So I would actually go with this vehicle, with the diesel, because it is rather calm driving and the diesels offer better fuel consumption. And also that you have a visual here on the inline 6-cylinder. This one here, the 3-liter 6-cylinder turbo petrol engine, 340 horsepower, and the 40i. 6.1 is the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers an hour or 62 miles an hour, and that is then just 0.7 seconds difference to the V8. So 0.7 seconds in the acceleration slower than the V8. So actually just minor. But let's see later on how the consumption difference will be. This is this computer car key. You can set the preconditioning, for example, for the AC. You can see the current mile range. Well, the replacement key is also just a normal one if that's too thick for you to carry around all the time. Let's get inside. Keyless entry, as I said earlier. You put your hand here on the top part, just a finger to close it, and then put your hand on the inside of the door handles to open it. Door closing sound, by the way. I heard it in a more solid way yet, I have to say. Then, well, those sounds here. I hate those sounds. At the moment the parking light's on, therefore it was doing that sound. Well, on the interior, it's a great build quality. This is the Hofmeister King now on the interior here at those matte door finish handles. Really cool. Seat massage if you want so as an option right there. Different strength. Then all galvanized buttons, and those are also in a matte finish, so everything is very, very well processed, really cool. This optional sound system, Bowers & Wilkins, has a great 3D sound, I can just recommend it. Also bigger bolts fit in the inside of the doors. Then this interior, it has different trim styling. This one here is dark blue together with bright. I just love the color combination, so the dashboard is dark, it doesn't have, glaring or effect. In the lower part, however, you have this bright effect then, and I just love having the dark blue in contrast, not to just having black. This adds, wow, it's such a wow interior. The only thing is that in those high trims, They use a lot of animal skin material. They should offer more sustainable alternatives. In the X5, you can also get sensor tech, the leatherette. In the X7, so far it is not confirmed. Maybe later, and it always depends on the market. But what is clear is that on the high trims, they don't offer alternatives yet. Although I really would like this one here with non-animal material because the styling is so awesome. Really, really cool. This is an M steering wheel. You can also get in a different one. It has a little asynchronous form. I usually prefer the normal ones. There's also seat, not only seat heating, but also a heated steering wheel available with this small button directly at the steering wheel, and also just the small buttons at the steering wheel. When you look at those and click them, they have a clicking sound. Even those minor details are so well built. So there were a few years where BMW was behind in build quality, but now they really stepped up the game. And I mean, yes, the entry price is somewhat around 80k, but a realistic BMW X7 is at least 100k as it stands here right now, probably 115k in euros in Germany. And therefore we can also expect a lot of fancy stuff, but it is also very well executed. Seating position here in the front, it's just a dream. Really so comfortable. You sit totally upright, have a good view to the front, and really just a relaxed feeling. The seat form is really great. All electric seat control right there. You can also put the front part of the seat a little bit longer if you have long legs. The steering column here also an electric control. I'm 1m86 or 6'1". Most of our subscribers know that, but we always have a lot of first-time viewers as well, so they need to know. Then head clearance still plentiful, and there's also this panoramic roof here, you know, with an additional shade, and you can also open it to give some more light. And in night time it's also illuminated, so those lights from the side come, and then in the middle part there are those small elements, and they reflect the light, and it looks like you have a dot star ceiling. Really cool stuff. Also, let me already show you some interior shots at night with the ambient lighting. You can set to different colors. Of course, blue is the most fitting one here for you at the middle console. So I think very well executed as for this case too. And also those entry lights. You know, first of all, the door handles are illuminated, and then also you can see at the side, just next to the doors, those BMW wings. And you can still also see that here at the top light at the ceiling, the same interesting structure. Small detail, X7 here stamped in the B pillar between front and rear door. I love that detail. You know, they really pay attention to those. Interior overview. You can see the Bowers & Wilkins sound system has its own visual on the top part there. Then 2x 12.3 inch, all digital instruments, and gladly they just went for this size. I really hate it when cars offer 3 or 4 different infotainment system size. This is just one, that's it. Of course, for that price we can also expect that. But again, both in 12.3 inch. Then you see something like a front grille design also here in the middle part. Those climate units, you can access them still individually, 2-zone, and really important, for example, my wife and me always discuss it. I wanted like top and feet, and she wants it not at the feet, but at the top and, just vertical right here. So you can then also trim where the vents are coming from for both sides individually. Very important for some couples. And even the ventilation for the seats and the seat heating, they both work at the same time. When you, for example, when it's winter time and it's raining at the same time, you get in the car, you're wet and cold all over the place, then you have seat heating and the ventilation at the same time. Just for summertime, of course, then just the ventilation also on in 3 different levels, again for both sides. Well, it's really a dream to look at, again with the blue dashboard right there. Also soft touched in the steering wheel. Again, don't like this asynchronous form of the M steering wheel, would prefer the normal one. Volume buttons right here to control also something of the digital instruments. And on the left side, the cruise control, where you have the lane keeping assist together with the ACC. I will explain more of that to you when we drive the car. You can even do an automatic lane changing. Then if you have the highest trim of this assistant package, then you would just hold the turning indicator while driving on the motorway, and then it does the lane change on its own. But you are supposed to keep this hands at the steering wheel all the time. However, only allowed on US markets, not in Europe anymore. After a while, they forbid it again to use those very sophisticated level 3 systems in Europe at the moment. Well, and there you already saw I was making it by mistake. You have those gesture controls here, for example, for turning up and down the volume. Still a normal metal knurling knob here, very well processed here too. Or for example, you can have this gesture here. Put it as a favorite. You can like drive home, and then you have this gesture. You can do it like this. Also, there's a voice control. You can either activate it at the steering wheel like this. Set temperature to 72 degrees.
I'm setting the temperature on the driver's side to 72 degrees Fahrenheit.
Or it's also possible to address it with, "Hey BMW."
Hello, what can I help you with?
Please drive me to Las Vegas.
Perfect. Our next destination is Las Vegas, Nevada.
Vegas, baby. This wood decor, by the way, wood is always standard for the X7. However, you can also get a different trim. For example, there's also a brighter open cell wood available if you want more this tactile touch and not this glossy surface.
And here we can see the head-up display you can get. It has a clear view, the allowed speed, the current speed, and you also get some GPS info. I can also show you how it looks like while driving. Then you also have the assistant systems info in there. And if you approach your next intersection, you have an even bigger GPS view, by the way.
Those digital instruments to save some space, you can see here on the right side and on the left side. Well, left side is the speed. Right side is RPM, and to save the space they've put the RPM meter counterclockwise, and I think that's still a quite strange thing. Peugeot used to do that, now also BMW, not exactly sure. Well, in the middle part, by the way, the camera picks up those those sensors there. You don't see them on in your real eyes. Those ones here, they check you out if you're still awake, and then recommend the brake recommendation or so. Scary to have those, but this is modern technology. Well, and then in the middle part, you, for example, have a GPS view, or also some fuel consumption infos on the right part. So you can change a little bit what you want to see, but it's not as flexible as for software than we know, for example, from Audi. Now to the infotainment system right here. The visualization is quite cool, however the menu structure sometimes drives me nuts. It's so complicated. The Apple CarPlay, if you have connected it, it is wireless CarPlay, by the way. Android Auto not available, and you cannot use it with a cable. So wireless, to have it is definitely quite nice. Also with a touchscreen and as control. You can also listen to your music and at the same time use the BMW GPS. There you get back to the BMW menu. If you use the central control knob, you can also access the CarPlay right there. But it always takes me some time to connect the wireless CarPlay and to get it to run. So it is a little bit more complicated to set it up once, but then when it runs, it's of course a little bit easier. You can also have the map in a bigger view right there. Should it be flickering at some point on the camera, by the way, that's just on camera. It's not as you would see it yourself. It's perfectly smooth, and you see very, very responsive here in real life. This is a power saving function after a while when the car is stationary. Other than that, you have some more other cool functions, like here this car menu, where you can have some, well, it's also the white color of the vehicle. I like when they paid attention to those details. Vehicle status here, for example, the tire pressure monitor. You can check out those ones here. Those apps that are available, not sure if you would use them so often. Maybe the weather app or something. But then again, you usually do it also on the smartphone. There again, you have to hit the start stop engine button again, that it stays alive. Here we go. Well, this is also possible to still connect your phone via Bluetooth. Then phone can be accessed right there. And you have to have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on at the same time, that the wireless CarPlay connection works. So this one would be the standard rear view right here, good resolution, and the drone view from above. You can also click here then, for example, or here to change the views to the right or left behind. This is a visualization. However, if I click the button in the lower part, I can also switch around the views. Rear right there. How can I get to the front? Let me put in the gear. There it is. So when I put in the gear, then it changes to the front camera. This is here a sliding cover. Then there's the inductive charging platform for the phone right there in the front. However, it gets really, really hot. You have to be advised for that, especially if you don't have... I have a cork phone cover here that it's still possible for the inductive charging, but if you don't have a cover and then touch the metal surface of your phone, it can be really hot when you put it out. Then there's a normal USB port in the front, as well as a 12-volt power supply. Adaptive cup holders, they also fit for bigger ones. It's quite cool. And they can be cooled and heated, and individually, maybe you want it cooled and your partner wants to have it heated. That's then possible right here. Wow, there's a lot to discover here. Maybe it's a little bit overloaded, not sure. But it's nice to have a separate button for the camera system, for example. This one is this crystal shifting lever. It doesn't feel that smooth. It looks more cool. And if there's a lot of sunlight from the outside, it can have some glares as well. Then the driving modes, talking about those while driving. On the right side, you control the infotainment system if you don't want to do it while touch. So while driving, that's better. Like this, and also some hotkeys. And then there's the air suspension control if you want to do it manually. So again, 4 centimeters up, 4 centimeters down. This is the option you have. And of course, the car also reacts according to the drive modes and to the speed a little bit automatically. And then we have the middle armrest, a split way, with a USB-C charger. This one then is for charging only. Let's open the rear doors. Here it gets really interesting. Nice finish also at the rear doors, all soft materials. Then there's an electric shade, for example, for the rear windows, which already have a darker tone. And wow, this is then really something to discover. This one is the 2-2-2 setup, so 6-seater with the captain's chairs. This is an option. Usually it would be a rear bench with 7 seats overall then. You know, it's more practical on the one hand, I will soon tell you why, but this one here rather for example, the Chinese businessman that wants to work in the vehicle. Pre-sales are a lot with those 6-seaters. Later on, I think the 7-seater will be more important. Really nice here also with this microfiber cushion here for your head. All electric also, the rear seats. You can see the controls here in the lower part. They are all the way back at the moment. And the question is, it's supposed to have 9 centimeters more legroom than the X5. When I now get inside, let's see how that one plays out. So, because in the X5 there was hardly any legroom left, and I have to say the package of this vehicle, so considering the length on the exterior and what room you have on the interior, especially in the rear, is still bad. Because, I mean, I now have plenty of knee room right here, but considering the length of the vehicle, I have this legroom here, let's say in a Skoda Scala or Skoda Kamiq, which is about like this shorter. So again, bad package, but as it's long enough anyway, you also have enough room for tall adults. You sit also quite high here in the rear, so that could be an advantage, for example, for kids. And those head restraints are really very nice. I'd like to put them a little bit higher though, that it fits more like this. Yeah. Wow. This is really... Can we stop the reviewing and just, rest for a while, maybe start sleeping? I can also put them a little bit more back right there. That's the stuff. This is really a great way to relax. Awesome. I'm not sure if I'm really keen on this entertainment system right here. You can see the map, for example, and also check out some car data info, but probably everyone will still use their smartphone anyways. Just take a look at that. You can basically have a mirror of the infotainment system in the front. But again, I more expect everyone to use their personal devices anyway. So I'm not quite sure if that's really that useful in that respect. Now I move to the other chair, and it's really cool to have, some more flexibility around you. Yes, it is more comfortable with those individual captain chair because, if you're seeking to go on long journeys with your family, but then not with so much luggage, then it would be the ideal solution. Or again, if you're more using it for business chauffeur purposes, then it's really cool to have it right here. Head clearance, still plentiful left. Again, 1.86 m, 6'1", if you haven't watched the front part. And then you also have this control unit in the lower end. This one is here, a separate climate control. So overall 4-zone AC. You also have a CD changer right there, still a classic one. And then some USB-C supplies right there. 2 more there, so this is everything you need. And also adaptive cup holders in the rear. That's pretty cool to keep the beverages tight. And I would almost start smoking just to be able to use that one here with the metal knurling, this ashtray. Very beautiful done, but of course, now kidding aside, I would never ever smoke in a car. I would never do that. Would you? Well, probably some do, but I don't want to, ruin the car with it. Of course, here you can light up your cigarettes if you like. But then you can also use it for, an adapter for more USB supplies. But I think this car really offers enough USB supplies. And from the rear, you also have a great view then again through this panoramic screen. And even at night, it is very beautiful when it's illuminated again. And the ISOFIX situation is really interesting because you have it here on the outsides, captain's chairs. And also if you would have the normal rear bench, so 1 and 2 ISOFIX possibilities. And then on the 5th and 6th, or otherwise the 6th and 7th, again 2 more ISOFIX possibilities. Glad they thought of that. What about the last seating row? So when you do it like this, it slides forward automatically. The front seat would also go a little bit more forward than this one is possible. And it lifts up, so you have an easier entry. Now let's imagine those last seats were down at the moment, and with those buttons here at the inside of the doors, you can put them up again or put them down. Just click them once. I was frustrated a little while because I didn't get it to work. And why? Because at some time this button in the front was activated where you could not open the rear windows, as a child protection. And when you have this button in the front activated, this function here for the last seating row is also deactivated. So check out that function if you don't get it to work. So here from this way you can also put the seats down again if you like. It takes a while, it's an electric system, but then again it's also quite comfortable to have it. Sometimes, however, I wish to make it just a little bit less complicated. I would just have it in the manual way. It has surely its pros and cons. But what is more important is when I now get here in the rear, how does that one play out? See, I have some gap right there to get it in. And here we go. And well, as for the headroom, put up those head restraints. I have a separate panoramic roof right here. I can also open and close it with a button. I have another climate unit here too, even with seat heating for those rear seats. Maybe here you can also see me a little bit better. It's really okay. This is of course a little bit closer here with my head, but I can sit here properly. This is really cool, and it's also very comfortable. You have your own zone, again also with the AC, you have own cup holders. And when I put the captain seat here right back, it comes towards me right there. Let's see if I have enough room here still and how that one could play out. Yeah, like this I could still sit. Now, whoa. Yeah, it was still okay. It was squishing me just a little bit, but it wasn't really that hurtful. So in this way I could still sit. Soon I get around and then take a seat in the captain seat again and see if that one plays out. But it is somewhat limited as for adults. Here more again for, let's say, kids that are not that young but also not that old, so something in between. But then again, you have the ISOFIX covers, but then also think about you could put the child seat in here, but as for safety, for a rear crash, your small kids will always be safer on those seats here than in the very latter ones. That's also maybe an aspect to remember. However, it's good to be flexible here somewhat. Some of you guys were also asking, can I leave it? Can I just get it here, the X5, as a 5-seater? No. The X5 can be bought as a 5-seater or as a 7-seater optional, but that doesn't make so much sense because there won't be any room here left in the rear. The X7 here, however, it makes sense. And again, really nice to look at this blue suede cover here in the rear that's being placed all over the vehicle. So if I had proper knee room right there in the 3rd seating row, I would be dwarfed in here on the captain's chair. So that's again my point. This car has a very bad package overall. So not a room wonder. I would need it like this. And then, well, there's hardly any legroom right, left there for tall L. So we had better 7-seaters as for the room that is available. This one here, definitely more the focus that you put those ones here all the way back. Just leave the last seating row and enjoy the luxury seating position right here. Many different ways to open this hatch. First of all, from the inside of the door at the driver's seat. Then the whole hatch opens, both parts. Then you could use the button right here. You can use the button at the key, and you have this foot kick opening mechanism. And in this case, when you use the foot kick opening mechanism, let me do it again, right there, both open, so the top part and the lower part. This one is of course cool somehow, you know, for picnicking or something like that, and for sliding things in and out. This is the advantage. I'll soon also come to the disadvantages of that. When you close the hatch, then both always close because the lower one has to close first. Then interesting, when you use the button right here to open, only the top part opens. For example, you know, if, well, you just have to put something in and out just quickly or so. And then the fourth possibility it is, you know, instead of the door, foot kick opening, this button, then let me use it here at the key. Then both open. So this is standard setup, but you can also switch some stuff around in the menu, but maybe it just gets too complicated then. Well, there we go. This one would be the setup when the seats are up, the last seating row. Also the dark blue suede cover here for the last part. This one protects it against views, yes, but it's also not that handy to have it in, so sometimes I also just pull it out to be able to be more flexible. You would just have this X7 bag that you can see there can still be some stuff here in the rear when you have the last seating row up. This one here is a cooling bag, also as an example, because this is a 12-volt power supply. You can put it right in there, and then the cooling bag gets activated. Also nice to have it as a sample. Now, what about the length here? So when the last seating row is up, this one here is about 45 centimeters in length. And the width should, in usual width, is about a meter, and that's also the case. It's actually a little bit more than a meter. So this is 1 meter and 10. And now they even have some standard information here, because some people get confused with those controls right there. There is this maximum passenger knob, and then there's a maximum luggage knob. And then you can also control each seat individually, you know, the last seating row and the row before that. Now, don't rush it, because just press it once and then wait a little bit, because then it takes some time. For example, here, just do it like this. Then don't wonder if it takes a little bit, because the captain seat before it needs to slide forward just a little bit, and then it works like this and it flips electronically. You can do the same way all over again. By the way, with the captain's chair, you can also adjust them a little bit from here, like this. Then they slide a little bit forward, and this is the central disadvantage of those, because, I mean, you're limited in loading things through. You can, you know, fold them a little bit up. I can soon show you that. Let me first show you this maximum knob. This one here again would be the knob that everything is going in a passenger way. Let me put it up again to have a better effect. And then this one here is the max knob for the luggage. And if I press this one, it should be adjusting for the luggage setup. That means both of those flip right there. And also the captain's seat, you see, they fold a little bit forward first, and then they go back again. But I think from a max luggage setup, I would rather expect that the captain seats also move forward. Or what do you think? So then I could do it like this, that they slide forward. Here we go. Well, and that's then basically it. If you would have the 7-seater with the real bench, then you can flip it totally and have more flexibility. The normal trunk length to the captain's seats is 1.20 meters, so that's not too much. And then the maximum setup here to this captain's seat, that one would be 1.60 meters approximately. And if you then would have the different setup here, with the 7-seater, you could load the things all the way through the middle console, and that one then is even a little bit longer than 2 meters. So, are you the captain's chair, or are you the 7-seater to be able maybe to just throw your mountain bike here in the rear? I love the captain's chair for the luxury aspect, but then again, I just want to be a little bit more flexible for the luggage compartment. Or what do you think? And now I've put both captain's seats right there in the front. This one would be the maximum loading setup for this one. Usually just a very small part in the rear trunk. This one is then 326 liters. Then the 7-seater with the bench flipped is 750 liters. And the maximum setup with the 7-seater again would be 2120 liters. Here with the 6-seater, of course, it's always a little bit less. And below the trunk cover, you can also store the real trunk cover. That would be more relevant for the 7-seater. However, the very small, longer cover for the very latter part, that one cannot be stored as it's too large. And now it gets really exciting, because here, this one here is the 7-seater with the bench that goes all the way through. It's the same style as for the trim, but you can see here now 3 seats in the rear and a bench that goes all the way through. Very interesting. There's electric control, and here you can see this one then is all the way back, and there you can already see you have more legroom than in the captain's chair. The seat there in the back is still in the front, so you really can adjust there a lot. And now we're talking. There it is. This is legroom, how I would expect it from a car of this length. So, well, the captain's chair, they are somehow more exclusive in, moving around. However, the bench here is also very comfortable. Yeah, when you are in the captain's chair, it really feels a little bit more like being in the front seat, just here in the rear. This one here is somewhat different from the seating position. The big advantage for the captain's chair is that it's really upright. Here, the rear bench, it falls a little bit backwards, and that is not that comfortable on the long-term run. So, for long journeys, I would recommend the captain seat here in the rear. However, this one is still comfortable. But those ones here definitely have the advantage that they have more legroom. They are also a little bit lower. You have a little bit more head clearance right there. And you're still somewhat adjustable right here. You can see that. Well, and then you can also let them flip forward if you want to access the last seats. So that's, a mechanism that is pretty much equal to the ones of the captain seats. They go forward and then go back again. And that looks really funny, doesn't it? Now the question is, does it make a difference? So how far does it go back, and how can I get out then again? With the captain seats, I could not really sit properly in the rear still. Now, whoa, getting squished again. So in that way, I could still sit. And now I'm getting out again somehow, somewhere, to see how I can still fit on this position then now again. And if the 7-seater variant is a solution that actually really 7 tall adults can sit in this car. See, this is Tom's workout with vehicles with more seats. Hey, I could free myself here, indeed. That's really cool. Back here again, and you see, it does exactly fit. So, yeah, it is somehow close, but definitely result with captain seats. You can basically forget the 6th and the 7th seat. Well, the captain is the 5th and the 6th seat. Let's say the 3rd seat in a row, you can forget it with the captain seats for adults. But here, it does exactly work, although that one would be more comfortable. Yeah, and then what about the middle seat? Well, let me put that one here back again. There's, small middle tunnel just, and of course the middle seat here is a little bit stiffer. Head clearance wise, it does work. There's so much to do with this vehicle here. Sliding backwards again. So in the middle part here you can also sit. That's actually quite okay, but lower and the back part is a little stiffer, so I would not recommend it for longer journeys. But you can see there's clearly a lot of thinking for you if you really decide to buy this vehicle, if you would go for this setup or for the other setup. Both have their pros and cons. Here, by the way, you also have this armrest with some storage and also with cup holders. However, I really love the cup holders that were there in the central part with the captain seats. They are not here because here you can still use the central seat here. And then we're now coming to the last advantage of this setup here. That is when we want maximum trunk length. And now what about the trunk here of the 7-seater with the bench that goes all the way through? So I'll remove this top cover here directly, that we have the maximum setup right soon, that you can see it. And this is the same here as for length, also just for the last seating row. And now I'll also hit this max luggage button, and then everything should go in this luggage position. Here we go. So the first seating row up till the bench here, you can of course move it a little bit. This one would always be 1.20 meters over 1.20 meters. It's interesting how it goes back again and then flips forward. You can also flip it forward from the passenger compartment, and now we're talking here as well. So up to my front seat when I would be driving, that is then 2 meters. And you may remember the captain seat that would be ending like here or so when you would have flipped then. So this then is the definite advantage of the rear bench. So you have to ask yourself, how much do you do traveling then with tall adults or with adults in general in the rear, and how much luggage are you transporting? It really depends on the purpose. I think it's really a harder decision because you can argue for and against it, but we've presented you both versions now in depth. Which one would you go for? Really looking forward to your opinion there in the comments. And one last thought to this split hatch. Well, I really love it that you can just sit on it, and maybe for picnic purpose or so. From here you can slide things in, but then the disadvantage here is when you want to reach over for something that is really deep hidden in the trunk. From here you can go like this and reach through half of the luggage compartment, and that's it. And when you have something pushed all the way through, then you cannot reach it. And if it would be a normal one which is not split, then you of course get closer to the car and can reach way further inside the vehicle. So this is again about pros and cons. And by the way, child safety. Yeah, it's also reasonable amount of torque applied that no one gets squished right there. And now, welcome to Thomas's driving lounge with the BMW X7. Well, and we have exclusively for you today this V8 4.4 liter V8. Of course, a massive amount of power, but how will it play out from a consumption and the different driving aspects of this engine? We have the rear axle steering. This is really helpful, especially when being inside the city. The car feels more agile. However, I talked to the suspension engineer and he told me actually they want to design it in a way that it's rather subtle, that it's not like, screaming out, I'm a rear axle steering. There are different rear axle steerings on the market nowadays, and this one is indeed rather subtle. It goes 3.5 degrees across and also 3.5 degrees parallel. So in both ways, so at lower speeds, like this, 3.5 degrees, and higher speeds parallel. And the threshold for that is 60 kilometers an hour in the comfort mode and 80 kilometers an hour in the sport mode. So in the sport mode, the rear axle steers against the front axle, higher speeds still. Very interesting. So, and this car is of course all about driving in a very relaxed manner, although we have a lot of power. We have this upright seating position, which is very comfortable. Then you have a superb noise insulation, so you basically hear nothing from the exterior. And as long as you have this engine in a rather calm way and don't force it too much, it's also very calm. You know what I mean? You have this big displacement, so you don't have to push it. So with very low RPMs, you can already have good accelerations. And this is also what this big displacement is about. We soon also go to the motorway, and we can also accelerate on there, show you about that. The suspension, it's always an air suspension in the X7, so the air suspension is standard. And it is also a different setup than the X5. In the X5, the air suspension was pretty stiff, actually. And here, although they share a lot of technology, you have a little bit longer wheelbase here, 13 centimeters longer wheelbase. But that doesn't make the biggest difference. The suspension setup is the one that makes a difference. And here the air suspension is set on a softer note. And I think, to my taste, that's a really good decision, because when you buy an air suspension, you want a soft air carpet ride. And in the X5, it was of course good, but more tuned to this very sporty note. And I think this one here is a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more calm. And this really does suit the vehicle. So if you maybe want to drive the X5 a little bit sportier and this one here a little bit more relaxed, I think that's a wise decision that they also went for some differentiation right there. Everything in my view, also with the head-up display here, but also in those digital instruments. Don't have the map for the GPS mounted here at the moment because it flickers on camera. It doesn't do in real life, but in that way, it's always interesting to follow some information. You can have some driving information right there. It's also the X view, like the turning degrees of the the angle, how the car is standing at the moment. It's also very interesting. So at the moment, there's no one behind us. There are different driving modes available, as we know from BMW. So when we go to the sport mode, for example, the gears are turned up higher. You have a little bit more punch then. The throttle input is also increased as for that. So let me just decelerate just a little bit, and then we can just hammer the throttle right there. This was already 60 miles. Wow. Yeah, I mean, the official figure is just 5.4 seconds to 60 miles or 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour, and I think we could easily reach that. We have to check the time code of the video again, but wow, that gave us a real good punch. The all-wheel drive, of course, gives a smooth distribution. It's a permanent all-wheel drive, so one of the classic ones. Also with the rear wheel bias, we also felt that rather sporty driving. Really, really cool. And you also heard the engine now, so when you really hit the throttle, then you can also hear something of that. Now let's go to 75, and it's so effortless. So when I'm also in the higher speed regions already, there's still always some acceleration coming. And now I can set the cruise control. There's an adaptive cruise control here. So set it here on the left side of the steering wheel. And then you can change the mode depending on if I just want the distance control or if I want the assisted driving mode. The assisted driving mode keeps me in the lane actively. So it's not thought out to be that you would leave the hands off the steering wheel, but here you see now it flashes yellow, say put your hands on the steering wheel again, but in general it keeps you in the middle of the lane. And how well it works, it depends really on the lines on left, on the right. It really depends on how well it works then. but usually it works quite good. The other thing is, with the lane departure assist when going off the road, this is something different. So when I deactivate the ACC now, here, this is the assistance systems button, and you can also change individual things in there, lane departure warning. So when I put it too early, for example, you can see when I then go off the road, it reacts quite harshly. Like this. See? And to my taste, this is a little bit too much countersteering. They have to go for those systems here also for mandatory reasons, regulations. And the manufacturers are all not that happy with those regulations. They don't want to put the systems in the way they want, and everyone is searching for a good solution. We also had the same problem in the Volkswagen Touareg lately, where they had to fine-tune this assistance system that it works better again. You can also put to medium or reduced. Reduced is, medium doesn't make too much of a difference, I felt. Reduced, let's test it that way. See here, that is not reacting that early, so I was crossing the line a little bit. If you put it to the other mode, it is steering, against the line before it hits the line. Very interesting, but, I don't want to recommend deactivating assistance systems. You can do it here, by the way, also with this button completely, but I do not recommend that. But when you're actively driving, I tend to put the lane departure warning off, because that just gives me a better feel for the car. And to me, it's a little bit safer than the car would suddenly intervene, somehow. But however, when I use the ACC with the combined assistant driving mode, then I use this automatic system. I think in that way it's more reliable than it has this emergency lane departure warning. So, of course, they somehow belong together also, but in that way they are also split in the way how it reacts. Very interesting. So we'll also follow this development for you. The tarmac here at the moment, by the way, is quite rough. So the noise level is here also higher than on other tarmac surface. In general, the wind noise and everything, although the car stands so high, like a driving cupboard against the wind noise still quite low. So as for the consumption, we've been driving a couple of 100 miles now already, so I got a very good feeling for the vehicle. And the average consumption for this V8 so far is something close to 17 mpg. And that's of course far from being fuel efficient. It's a classic V8 engine. So this 17 mpg US would be something 20 mpg UK, and German or European liter figures would be about 14 liters on 100 kilometers. It can even be a little bit worse at times, depending on where you drive the vehicle. There you can see that when you go for the V6 instead, then you definitely save a couple of liters on 100 kilometers, or thinking about the MPG, the inline 6-cylinder petrol engine will be more than 20 mpg in the US, and also UK, way more than 20 mpg. So yes, indeed, when you go for the V8, the consumption is higher, consumption is worse. And again, we have seen this acceleration. If that's really important for you, you have it, and you have the sound, depending on how cheap or how expensive fuel is, and how much you are interested in the good fuel economy. We have had the inline 6 already in the X5, so you can check out that review. So we went for the V8 here instead, because it's also exclusive to our friends in the US. We cannot get the V8 petrol in Europe, and probably it would also be way too expensive as for the petrol. And I have to say, in this case, I'm not the biggest fan of diesels in general, but the BMW diesels are really good. They are very well performing in all our tests, and they have incredible low consumption. The BMW 5 Series was one of the most fuel efficient cars I've been driving, with the big 3-liter 6-cylinder diesel. That was something very astonishing. So really good what they have done with the diesels there, and all the newer ones also have the SCR cleaning that you reduce the NOx emissions. But today it's also about the V8, as I said. But when you're just cruising and rolling, like this car is also majorly used for, probably, then it doesn't make so much difference. It's really the acceleration where it makes all the difference. And here, you know, when you have this active lane keeping assist, you can really relax, enjoy the upright seating position. You also sit higher than in the X5. Here you rather have the feeling that it's sitting on the seat rather than in the seat. The ceiling is very high, therefore you have a spacious feeling while driving. So we're having a very nice travel here with the car, going all the way through Texas from east to west. I think that's probably one of the very ideal cars for doing exactly that. And now we deliver you a scenic ride. Look at that perspective here in Big Bend National Park. Really great scenic view. Make sure I turn the car around for you. So I'm also testing the turning circle now. Here the camera view. Rear camera, I can just drive to the pavement right there. And this rear axle steering now also helps to reduce the turning circle. Again, 3.5 degrees opposite direction in the front wheels. That makes it more agile. I can also feel it when driving slower here now. The car then feels smaller than it actually is.
In a quarter of a mile, turn right at the end of the road onto Ross.
Really interesting, you know, that a big car can feel so small, so to say. The air suspension is a little bit softer than in the X5. We also feel it when you drive a little bit more agile than here, so the car, well, you know, it doesn't really shake more because it also has this anti-tilting function, so that reduces then the roll, but you somehow feel that the suspension is softer. And again, I can just say this is, to me, more likable than the X5, but it's also a matter of preference. If you like more sporty SUV driving, then the setup in the X5 is more something for you. Here in this national park, the speed limit is, well, sometimes even slower, usually 45, here in some corners even 30, and then you hear absolutely nothing. Now, when we were driving on the motorway, was of course a little bit louder than also with rough tarmac, and when we went just faster, but still sound insulation was superb. And when you then at slower speeds here, then you absolutely hear nothing. It's so silent you can really relax. That's you know, that's really cool. And you always stay, most of the time stay in speed regions where you can really use this agile part of the rear axle steering. However, you know, like still comfort mode, you know, then 40 mph, it should be then closely coming to the areas then when we also have this parallel steering from the rear axle steering. So it's definitely a good option to go for, especially for the X7. Now also enjoy this panoramic drive. We are also having this perfect evening mood with a blue-ish light is starting. That is always so beautiful. Well, with the V8, the consumption is really high indeed. Doesn't really pay off to have this engine in contrast to the 6-cylinder petrol engine, and also in contrast to the diesels. The only thing you really know is the sound. That is really different. From the exterior, it really sounds like a sports car. You know, you heard that in our shots, but here also so well insulated from the cabin that when I go to the sports mode and then accelerate again, you don't hear it that much. You know, the probably things you hear most will be, again, some luggage pieces flying all over the car or something. Yeah, a little bit, but BMW engineers also discussed that. They were thinking of, shall we actually do a sound actuator to bring some more sound into the interior than from the engine? But they decided against it because they said we had so much effort to insulate this cabin here from everything and also from the engine noise that they didn't want to, let's say, open it up again and bring some extra noise in the cabin. So that was their decision. And I think you can definitely understand that. The suspension, by the way, also in the sports mode, still stays very comfortable. You have some more stiffness, definitely, so if you prefer that. So here in the sport mode, it comes closer to the usual setup of the X5. That's very interesting. So you still, as it's an adaptive air suspension, have the choice to go a little bit stiffer than again. You also can go to the Eco Pro mode. Then it's more set, possible sailing, for example, to save some fuel. Throttle input is being reduced, or you can also make it a little bit more individual as well. But usually you do it for sports mode or comfort mode. But you can also stay in comfort mode and use the shifting pedals to shift down if you want to start an overtaking maneuver, for example. Or if you're going downhill for a longer time, then use the engine brake with shifting down. Or just hold the right pedal for a couple of seconds, and then it goes back to the automatic shifting mode once again. And well, it's a big car, but since all the windows are rather upright, it still has a very decent overview. And again, you know, it doesn't feel so much bigger than the X5, so it's really very well to ride. Those technologies have come so far that you drive a very big car, but you can still handle it super easily. So both motorway and also here, driving in the national park is really just a pleasure with this car, no doubt. And yeah, you can just continue to enjoy those views here. I think really a great episode for us and also for you to enjoy, to combine a premium vehicle here with this marvelous landscape. And now to driving the 6-cylinder petrol engine. As for suspension and everything, it's of course all totally the same. I can just say again that the setup of the air suspension is really to my liking, and no matter if you go motorway or also countryside road, it's really very well to ride and gives just a very good natural driving feeling. And it's really astonishing how BMW could transport their core brand values also to a big SUV, and indeed also the steering feeling is better than with the all-new BMW 3 Series, which I didn't like so much as for the steering setup. Well, very interesting finding that the big SUV has a better steering setup. Maybe it does react to all the steering commands. Again, here the very low degree angle ratios could be a little bit more sensitive, but then again you could also argue that in a calmer vehicle you might also want to drive a little bit more calm steering wise. But as soon as you go to further steering degree angles, then you also get a very good feeling for the vehicle. But definitely I think that BMW should take a look at it. But I think in the 3 Series it was worse definitely than here. This one is also the normal steering wheel, by the way. So here in this car we don't have the M steering wheel, and I think I really like this one here more. Somehow, as it's really symmetrical, that's somehow better for the eye, even just when looking at it. So, and then this engine here, the acceleration difference was just 0.7 seconds, so there's not so much performance lost whatsoever. But consumption, this one is a big difference. So this one here, you can drive with about 11 liters on 1 kilometers, or that's about 21 mpg US or 25 mpg UK. And that will, at the end of the day, be more than 3 liters difference on 1 kilometers between this one here, the 6-cylinder, and the 8-cylinder. So there's really a lot of consumption cost you get extra than with the V8. And as long as you're just rolling, you don't feel too much of a difference. Sound-wise, yeah, that's the biggest difference, because this one here you hardly hear. You also heard the comparison there when you're standing outside. That one is then even better to notice. Well, an awesome landscape here, right again around Big Bend. Let me go to the sport mode. Also interesting that we have the different color here displayed right there. There's no one far, no one behind us. And let me just hammer it here with the acceleration, just as it is with the V8, and see how that 6-cylinder plays out. That was 55 miles already. Had to go slower than immediately. Wow. That was again pretty cool. Again, from the all-wheel drive, it delivers a very good smooth acceleration. We heard the engine, yes, it was not that growling as the V8, but the performance was really superb. If you unexperienced car drivers and have driven a lot of different big engines, yes, you still notice somehow a small difference when you go on the throttle. This one here is already a big engine for nowadays relations. But when you go on with the V8, you can even be a little bit more smooth with the throttle. So here I need a little bit more throttle input. So I like to use the term sovereignty, even though it's not being used in this context. So the V8 gives a little bit more sovereignty, or let's say a little bit more confidence. Is it really more fun to ride? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Also when you're going uphill now, you have enough performance here, but somehow you feel with the V8 that there's just a little bit more calmness due to the more power. That's very interesting aspect, yes. But then again, at the cost of this plus consumption, I think it does not pay off unless you say, I really don't care about the consumption. Don't care about myself personally, and also the fuel prices are very low in my country. But then again, as I think of my country, it would make a significant difference. And you also have to think about refueling a vehicle. And it might also be a reason to go for a diesel if it's available in your market for this car here, because then you just have more range. And if you're just in the middle of nowhere here, a higher range might also be a very important factor. And now to our conclusion for today with the all-new BMW X7 and this marvelous landscape here. So I think, well, I really enjoyed it here. I hope you really enjoyed this combination here also with the car and the landscape. Well, as for the exterior, it's of course really, really strong. That's also what some of the markets were demanding. And this huge front grille, I mean, you immediately realize it's an X7. You can surely argue if it's maybe a little bit too much. That's up to personal preference. The interior is very well built, so it's an excellent build quality and it's really pure luxury, especially in the captain's seat setup. However, the better setup, to my taste, would be definitely the 7-seater, not the 6-seater. So the 7-seater where we can definitely flip down the whole bench, that you can, for example, also just fit a bicycle in there. So I would go for that one to be a little bit more flexible. And what's of course missing, they offer it sometimes then in the entry versions with the sensor tech, but in the high trim versions, BMW also needs to offer more sustainable alternatives for the seating. That's where they have been working on, yes, but they're a little bit lagging behind there at the moment. Other than that, you have a lot of space, of course, on the interior. You could theoretically have a little bit more when the seats weren't that, thick and voluminous, so it's not a good package. But since the car overall is that large, of course, you'll have plenty of space overall. The driving, it's great in driving. The air suspension has a really incredible setup. Also, with the rear axis steering, it is more agile to drive than you would expect from the interior. So again, BMW proves that they have really good driving performance also when it's a big and luxurious SUV. I think it's also a better setup than the BMW X5, which was to my taste a little bit too sporty from the air suspension if you expect this air suspension carpet ride. So I think a very good setup they found right here. Well, and overall, it's, of course, a very expensive vehicle. It surely has its market. With the V8, it's not really necessary. The consumption is very high. The smaller engines will also be just fine for the US. For example, with the inline 6-cylinder petrol engine, you have less consumption, but only some less performance. The big difference is the sound from the exterior. That one is significantly better with the V8. And for the European markets, the US won't get the diesels. They're still discussing it, but probably they won't. For the European markets, I can really recommend the diesel because those 6-cylinder, 3-liter diesel engines from BMW are actually quite fuel saving and they still offer good performance. And since this is a vehicle where you don't do so much racing with anyways, it's also just okay if you keep it calm and then have, just a wider range and also lower consumption. So this is altogether also a good combination. What do you think about the all-new BMW X7? Please leave us your comments.